Welcome to the Volunteer Youth Worker Podcast. Youth ministries rise and fall on the volunteers, so we are here to encourage and equip you. Join the conversation as we tackle the practical questions you are asking so you can help the next generation know Jesus.
All right, I've got Dr. Jason Burtt here today on the Volunteer Youth Worker Podcast. Jason, fill us in. Where are you coming from today, and what is it that you do? What made you a doctor? What kind of doctor are you?
I am a doctor of sociology. So I'm hailing from Langley, BC, British Columbia. I work at Trinity Western University, and I teach all sorts of courses from statistics and methods to youth and emerging adulthood, which is a course I'm teaching this fall. I teach sociology of religion, sociology of family. I teach on technology and social change. And I'm also teaching a positive sociology class because unfortunately, it's strange. It's kind of a newfangled thing that I didn't come up with it, but I've designed a course based on it. And I think it's one of a kind in the sense that we know of positive psychology. We know that people in the psychology world want to know what makes a person happy, but we don't often talk about what makes groups happy. And so
that's really interesting. And I should say how we got to this point. So Trinity Western has been a longtime partner of ours at Youth Worker Community. We've had you folks at our events through the pandemic. We had a beautiful partnership. So we love the work of Trinity Western in raising up next generation leaders, and you guys have done that so well over the years. And so legitimately, I was just chatting with the crew, and I'm like, hey, it'd be fun to actually have, since you have thoughtful people that are really and truly forming the next gen, just a couple years after they're in our youth ministries. Why don't we just talk about one of the things that you guys are wrestling with? And so that's what led us to this. I have no idea how to describe sociology. So when somebody's like, okay, what's positive sociology, or what is the study of sociology? What does that mean?
Yeah, again, thanks for having me. I think there's a lot of crossover between sociology and, or essentially the study of what some people might consider the study of culture, and ministry. And there's a long history there, I think. But we won't go deeply into that. I think to answer your question, sociology is just basically the study of social groups. So the way I describe it, the smallest unit of analysis in sociology is a single person. This single person might fill out a survey or answer questions in an interview or something like that. But what we're interested in is the smallest group, which is two. It's called the dyad. So I'm interested in everything from parental relationships with their kids, or a married couple, or a teacher and a student. I mean, even that small. But our largest unit of analysis is a society.
Okay.
Which you might interchange the word with a nation. And so I'm interested in the difference between the U.S. and Canada, countries in Europe, East Asia. And so we, as sociologists, study those differences culturally, but also, and we do this quantitatively and qualitatively. So you can use survey data and run high model statistics, or you can sit down and have conversations with people or do focus groups. We do all of that. And so it's actually a really interesting way of studying religion. It's a really interesting way of studying Christianity. And I was formerly a youth pastor. And so that's kind of how I got into sociology, where the questions that I was asking as an academic. I was finishing up my MDiv equivalent to become an ordained minister with the Canadian Baptists of Western Canada. And I thought deeply about a lot of these cultural issues. And I was taking classes at the same time. I hadn't quite finished up my plan. I felt called to get a PhD. And so the plan was to continue working in academia. And I realized that the questions I was asking were sociological. They were cultural. And it pushed me down that road. I mean, I was working with young people who are struggling with these hot button issues, and at the same time why are some churches more successful than others, it seems, at reaching young people? And why do some churches grow and others don't? And what does it even mean to grow? Is growth numerical, or is it spiritual, or is it both? Does it have to do with discipleship? Well, I think it is, a little bit of all of those things. And And so I try to bring a lot of those questions and those things that make me passionate it keeps me awake during my own lectures at Trinity Western. So I just want to, cultivate that passion even among my students, that they can ask these hard questions, and that's okay. In fact, it's invited, for sure.
Okay, well then let me ask if we can wander into one of those kinds of questions. Our listeners are volunteer youth workers, but we do have youth pastors listening, so I'm sure the youth pastors want to know a bit more about tell me how to grow my youth group. Like, how do I get more students?
Yes,
and so we're gonna set that one aside. As great as a conversation as that is, and if I'm a volunteer and I'm looking at the kids in front of me, you just said something about what does it mean to grow, or is there a qualitative nature to, growth in faith? And I often think when you're sitting in a small group and you're investing your time, you want to know that, hey, if this student's a part of this community for the next 4 years, that you've actually made a difference, or that kid has grown closer to Jesus. And sometimes some youth workers can feel like, oh, there's so many other forces at play in our society that are moving students away from Jesus. Do we have any chance at all of being a part of seeing them come to know him more? And do we have an opportunity to kind of push in that direction? Is that something that you've seen in your own experience, or in the writing, or in the literature, or the research, or anything along those lines?
Well, absolutely. I can identify. I felt the same way. Am I tipping the scale? Lord, what am I doing here? I feel like I'm not making a dent. I'm not making any inroads with these students. I don't speak Gen Alpha well enough. Those questions come to all of us. We think about these things every single youth pastor, every youth worker is concerned about whether or not they're being successful. I guess maybe that might be the way to ask the question. But as we mentioned earlier, I'm very passionate about realizing that this is God's work, ministering the gospel, whether it's through an academic setting like mine, or if it's in, straight up in the youth, in youth group, or at a Sunday service, or a Sunday night service at church, or if it's on the street. Wherever we're doing ministry, we're doing the Lord's ministry. We're participating in His business. And he's much better at saving people than I am. It's his job to transform, the work of the Holy Spirit to enlighten someone, to open their heart and their mind to his love and his power to change and to heal and to forgive. And so if I can, just continue to participate in what he's doing by his strength, there's nothing I need to be ashamed of, really. I'm just, it doesn't come from works. It comes from faith. Even though we do works, it's not the works aren't the basis for our success in ministry. It's trusting that we are we're participating with Christ. So we live and move and have our being in Him. And it's through His strength that these things, these ministries are being done. And so we can try new things. We get to participate. We get to be creative. I recently earned the Innovative Teaching Award for 2025. And honestly,
nice. Congratulations.
I was shocked. This was at Trinity Western University.
Yeah.
I was shocked, actually. I was just so desperate to make changes, to make things, I guess, more exciting and participatory with my students, including trying to avoid academic dishonesty, or the temptation of academic dishonesty given AI and ChatGPT and all these other large language models that kind of make take-home writing assignments impossible to assign anymore. So I pivoted, and I was making all these changes. Some of them really landed, I guess. So I was like, and to be honest, I was digging into the youth pastor side of me. I was digging in to the history that my wife and I've had in youth ministry, and brought out a lot of those activities, and sort of, and I didn't really have to tack on an academic side to it. It was more like the academics were driving the setting, the lectures, and the material. But it was like the framework of getting youth involved. So an example, when we were in youth ministry, we had a live dinner theater that we used as a ministry opportunity to invite people from the community in to see a big pig on a spit. So apologies to those of you that don't eat meat, but we had this huge pig on a spit that it was a pirate. Okay, I just better say it. It was a pirate themed dinner theater. And so of course you had to have a pig on a spit. So it ended up on the main dining table with an apple in its mouth. And it was I don't even know, 8-course meal or something. And it was very piratey with this huge banqueting table, right? And all of the youth were involved learning lines, playing roles. And we had a story. In fact, they wrote the story for this pirate-themed dinner mystery theater thing. And,
No way.
And so all the youth were involved with the music, and they were involved. So in my classroom, I said, look, culturally, we're going through a lot of stuff. And it was it actually was a depressing class. It's called Contemporary Social Issues. And most people, I mean, at least when I was in secondary, it was called Current World Problems. I mean, it's a very depressing class. And all you do is talk about problems. You don't talk about solutions. And that's partly why I came up with the positive sociology class. But students would come in to this class and leave depressed. And so I was like, well, I wonder if we could just pivot and do something fun, but maybe we could tease out some of the social problems in ways that are grounded in stories that these students have in their real lives, and that they could that they could perform in a sense, and in doing so realize maybe some solutions, even small ones, to some of these problems. So that's what we did. So I assigned every group I think I split the class into like 4 groups, and each of them had to come up with a social problem that they could act out. Mm-hmm. And on stage, learn lines, use props, and we ended up using the theater to do this at the university. And I didn't invite anybody because I didn't want that pressure to view. So we didn't have much of an audience. It was really just the rest of the students and myself. But I've really never seen that class come alive the way it did in that setting. The youth, we had issues around poverty, issues around addiction, concerns about family life and broken families. We had issues around abortion and divorce. There were all sorts of themes that came out. And the students had a chance to connect the reading material and all the quote unquote academic stuff with sort of real practical life.
Yeah. Okay. And so what about that kind of thing? Because I guess I'm going back to what do I say? Like a lot of times as youth workers, we think perhaps about our ministry as we have to convince our students of something. And so like we'll give a talk, that's a sermon. And then, we have this new thing called small groups. This is a chance for them to think more deeply about it. But there's 12 students in the mix. And so we ask one question and only 2 get to answer it. And then, by the end of the night, half the group hasn't had a chance to participate. And it's almost like it's this cognitive exercise, probably similar to post-secondary, which used to be, okay, I'm going to give you a lecture and then you're going to go and write a paper in reflection. It's a very cognitive. This seems like it's moved beyond the cognitive solely, and perhaps there's results from it. Is that something that is did you just stumble into that, or is that born out of the data? Like, what do you know about how we can actually embody and become different kinds of people through these different kinds of means?
Yeah, I mean, in preparing, thinking about this podcast, I thought about how important relationships are, mentorship, and community. So, I mean, given the reliance that we have these days on technology for entertainment, people can binge watch Netflix alone if they want and be entertained, play video games all day. We now have large language models and bots that we can chat with and even quote unquote, and I air quotes, build relationship with. I mean, there's people who really think that they've got a connection to this virtual machine, and it just can't do for you what God can do through you, for you, through relationships, through community, through embodied relationships. And there's a few layers here. It's, no one can be discipled in a vacuum. It doesn't happen. So you absolutely need groups of two or more. You need relationships. And I think about how important it is for the older generations, even if it's a one generation, to take the responsibility on of raising up the next one, because that's how young people are going to be socialized, whether we like it or not. And the primary tension. So in sociology, we talk about the primary agents of socialization, which are parents. They're primary. They are the ones who socialize children. They shape their lives. They teach them how to be good citizens. They train them up in the Lord if they're Christian, right? The secondary agents of socialization are competing with the primary agents. And these are peers, teachers, employers, coworkers, all of these people, pastors even, right? They're in the mix. Church is in the mix of secondary agents of socialization. And they're vying for this person's life, to convince them how they should live. And it's often just I would say unintentional. It's more like just by impulse. People just do this. They don't think deeply about I'm intentionally going to try to socialize these young people in this way, but it happens naturally. And so whatever currents are happening in culture, that's why our young people are getting swept up. They're getting swept away in it. And so all the more important to have these small groups and church settings and youth camps and rallies and conferences and anything to in a sense, give space for young people to be socialized in the ways of the Lord. I mean, I know their parents are doing this, but they're also realizing that out in the world, there are competing forces for their life. And these are cultural, and there's institutional movements, if you will, that are also patterns of behavior that we see in society. That they gravitate to. And so, having the opportunity to share the gospel in these spaces is so important for the shaping of the future lives.
Yeah, maybe talk about what else. How would I say this? So, like the idea of socializing inside of faith community, obviously, sounds like that's a beautiful way to anchor. Because if we just are giving them like intellectual precepts, like here, think of this, that's not going to at all have the same kind of weight as when they are caught emotionally by a story of somebody on TikTok, or whether they watch play a game that's drawing them in. So I'm fascinated that, a different even method of teaching that you've experienced that allows some of that, those ideas to kind of fuse more deeply. As youth workers, for us, I think appreciating that is valuable, but then it still feels like there is so many other of those forces. Maybe this will just be a question that will make me sad. But when you think about the positive things that youth workers and churches do, what do you see in the data around groups and around how change happens or how faith is rooted that can kind of affirm that the power actually from us? Because where first, even you mentioned like chatbots, I think one of the interesting challenges is like, if you can go on and chat with a chatbot, all of a sudden it's a bit of a devaluing of the chat experience that might even come inside your youth group. And so, if you can get content elsewhere, well, then we're not the only content provider in town. I think probably in somewhere hundreds of years ago, you went to church because that was the only place that had content. Like it was the cool presentation of some kind. Well, that's obviously no longer the case. So we're not the only game in town there. We're not the only one around even conversation. What do we have at our disposal as people of God that has a big impact, and you can even see it borne out in research or data or anything along those lines?
So the primary, the heart of Jesus is love, and the heart of even my ministry as a sociology professor, I'll even put it that way in those words, in those terms, is to love my students. I always lead with love. That seems to be the most attractive thing. So if I'm competing with anything, at least I know that the love of Christ is primary. Like the love of Christ is the most powerful force. There just isn't anything more powerful than that. And if in my participating in that, my sharing in that, as I said before, in some ways it takes the weight off of me having to be performative, but it also is a great reminder that I just really need to pray. Prayer is so primary and powerful that there's things that I can't convince. I'm not cool enough to convince these kids that they should follow Jesus. But Jesus is cool and powerful enough to reach them. So there's that. The other thing is that in terms of what we're seeing is increasing. Yeah, go ahead.
Well, I don't know if I've not thought of this before, but the power of the love of Jesus and that we get to express it is like you said, it's the most powerful thing that we have. It's the thing that can't be replicated. And yet it's also the thing I would wonder if you know a bit of how this goes and works in groups, but there is for sure the movement I think about, without making any kind of claims or declarations, but like the LGBT movement centered itself around love and acceptance. And I would argue probably that love was still inviting some kind of performative nature on the part of the participants. But whether or not that's the case, the marketing of it is like, hey, we're going to love you. And students were drawn to that, or they're still drawn to that. And I'd be fascinated to know, centering and kind of front loading the idea of like the love of Jesus and the love of the Christian community. That would be not that that's going to, there's lots of groups that's still a part of them for sure. So it's not like we haven't been doing the love thing, but at the same time,
you're right.
It just hit me fresh when you said it in that kind of way.
Yeah. And so I'm going to come around to answer that specifically. And in the context that you mentioned, with sexual minorities, namely, we can use that as an example. So we are seeing a trend of disaffiliation. Young people are sort of leaving affiliation. Some would say they're leaving the church. I have a hard time saying that because the data show that young people still believe in God. More than half of millennials believe in God. I mean, and this is slightly older data, but I would suspect that this carries on to Gen Z and Gen Alpha, that the majority believe at least in a higher power. I believe with millennials, it was like 62% in Canada. Like there's still that understanding that there's something bigger than yourself out there in the cosmos. So yeah, this is an open door for ministry, for opportunity to share the love of Jesus. But I think often the church shares a what's the word? Like a commitment to an agenda. Like the church has often been caught up in their belief structure or their organization. Like, why don't you join us organizationally, as opposed to relationally knowing the person of Jesus? And I think that kind of gets at the heart of where we've lost a few. Because even in my own ministry, my own past, I know where I centered on Christ, focused on the love of Christ and loving people, not necessarily condoning everything they did or believing everything they believed, but leading with love. I actually use that language in my classroom. So I have students of all stripes. I have students from every community in my class, including the LGBTQ community. And I tell my whole class, because the lowercase holy trinity of sociology is race, class, and gender. And so these hot button topics come up all the time. They have to. We have whole chapters on sex and gender. And so I say, okay, before we even dip into this conversation, you are loved. You are welcome here. You are cherished. God loves you. I love you. There's nothing that's going to separate you from that love. Okay, that's where we start. And so whatever you believe, we may disagree. We might have fundamentally different expectations. Trinity Western University being an evangelical institution, it must be, I think, the 6th statement of faith, maybe 7th in my life, maybe even 8th. Statement of faith within sort of the evangelical orbit. and including things like a biblical view of marriage between one man and one woman. It's just pretty textbook evangelical, and and it is within the church in which I'm ordained as well. And so I say, okay, within my university, within the belief structure of my university, and within my church, we do have this biblical view of marriage that looks like this, one man, one woman. But this isn't to say that you are unwelcome here, or that you are that somehow that God is not happy with you, or that he does not love you, or even like you. It's the opposite. He loves you. He's inviting you in, and he wants you to be here. I do believe that there are levels of transformation that I hope would come in this person's life. I do believe that, but I'm not saying that that's now a stipulation for whether or not you are loved in my class or whether you are loved in my church. So yeah, it's a very tense, difficult topic, but I have yet to have a student of any community, including the LGBTQ community, come in and say to me that they feel somehow ostracized by this or put off by this, or that they will never be able to leave my class and honestly say, oh, God hates me, or God hates my community, or God, none of that language is even allowed. I don't allow it. So I think it gives space for essentially, we don't have to dip into the politics. We don't have to get into that stuff. There are people of the Christian faith that have different theological views on this as well, and I recognize that. And they have the freedom to disagree with me, and that's fine. But I come from this background, and I'm certainly not ashamed of it. But at the same time, I'm not making it a stipulation, a necessary condition for relationship with my students.
Yeah,
that they believe the same way I do.
Yeah. Yeah, that's really interesting. I'm fascinated by what you said about that the majority of people really do believe in God. So there is this common narrative. And then I'm also fascinated, by thinking through, even I wonder, I don't know, I've been in ministry too for my whole working career. And so more these days than ever, I'm intrigued at trying to find a way to practically articulate it. And we're not gonna be able to do it in this conversation. That's fine. But like, if you as a volunteer youth worker that are listening, what does it actually mean to show the love of Christ to the students in your youth ministry? That's an interesting question. It's an interesting one to kind of wrestle with. It's a one to pray and ask the Holy Spirit, like, what would it mean to show the love of Jesus tonight to the students that are in front of me? Because I think that might inspire a fresh understanding of what the Spirit might be up to in our midst. And if what you said earlier is correct, I think it so much is, like the power of love. And I think back to a number of students in our ministry, one in particular, I'll never forget, because we got this response through a school teacher who was at that school, but she was also a volunteer with us, and she had kind of heard this conversation where this a teacher that was kind of atheist and very much against faith, and she was kind of actually trying to articulate to this girl, like, hey, you shouldn't go to that church youth group, like, don't you know they don't like you? And this student got so upset. She's like, no, you listen to me. That group of people, those people love me. Wow. And they love me so much. Even if they don't agree with everything that I do, I will be at that place as long as they'll let me and as long as those doors are open. And it was, this beautiful story.
Oh, great.
Of being able to journey with the student over years and through lots of ups and downs. But as youth workers to wrestle with, okay, what does the love of Christ look like inside of this kind of thing? And maybe this is a good place to kind of come towards an end. And obviously, Jason, I said at the start, like, we don't, you teach for like an hour at a time, and this has only been like 30 minutes.
We're just getting started.
This is like we're introducing the syllabus, and then
exactly.
For the next 13 weeks, we're going to spell this out.
Yeah, so they should write an essay. We have time to write an essay, don't we?
Well, and maybe you can, I mean, obviously we love Trinity, so people should come and hang out at Trinity. But does this spark anything when you think about the work you're doing with positive sociology right now? Does it spark anything of like, oh, you guys should check this out, or like point us in a direction, or something to think about as we kind of wrestle with some of this kind of bigger question?
Okay, say that question again.
Yeah, so positive, you said you're working on positive sociology.
Yes.
what, as you think about the love of Christ, like, is there a connection here that you see or that you're thinking about, or a book or a resource or an idea that you're like, oh, you guys should really think about this, or take a look at what's happening over here with this group. There's this group of, monks in, Whitehorse that are expressing, I don't know.
Yeah.
Is there something that comes to mind though?
Well, I mean, there's the big picture that everything that you do that you feel the Lord's leading you into, whether it's sports related in art or beauty or something to do, and I mean beautification, and I'll explain that in a second. Anything to do with business or crime prevention or any of these things that promote human flourishing are in the orbit of some pretty high level academic research right now in terms of understanding what contributes to human flourishing. And so we what do people do? It's the lived reality of and some would call this sort of lived religion even, of how people live their lives. And so what is your experience like, as a woman going to the beauty salon, or as a man going to play on a softball league, or in my case, it's the church soccer league. Like, these organizations are contributing to human welfare, to human flourishing. And I think that what's exciting about this class that I'm teaching is that it sort of opens students' eyes up to the fact that there isn't just one way of thinking about flourishing, which some might have in their mind, of sort of coming together at church and singing worship songs, or that's somehow the extent of contributing to human flourishing. But no, I mean, we are embodied human beings, and we do all sorts of fun things and all sorts of difficult things. And we need all of our organizations and institutions to function well. And so one of my students studied the RCMP and presented on the RCMP. And one of my students, actually, the reason why I talked about beautification and beauty salons is because she actually studied this beauty salon's mission statement and why they felt like they were successful at having great patrons, great service, and returning customers and things like that. And another person studied like a food bank, the more obvious kind of social work expectations that you have when you think of human flourishing. And all of them got A's. Like, all of them crushed it. All of them did really well in their presentations. And it was very clear because they were using theory and using just the practical reality, and they had some qualitative data because they interviewed people at these businesses and organizations. And we're able to say here are the ways that these folks are doing good work. And you and I would say God's work, from a common grace perspective, we would say, wow, these folks are actually contributing to human welfare and human flourishing in interesting ways. So that's kind of why the positive sociology class developed, other than the fact that everything else that we talked about in sociology seemed very, very depressing, and there weren't any really good solutions. And so we wanted to point to things that were working. Like, that's what the number one thing that I find difficult about working with other sociologists in the world, and just in general, is that they're very good at pointing out what's wrong. They're not very good at pointing out what's right or why. They're very good at tearing things down, not very good at building things up. And as a Christian, naturally, I just want to build things up. I don't want to tear things down. So can we point to things that have been built up well? Can we express why those things are working well and why they're important? Why is it important to have a good coach? What is a good coach? Someone who encourages you, who doesn't scream at you all the time, who cares about your time off as well, who knows how to balance how they coach you with whatever your parents' expectations are of you, or you as an academic, as a student. So at Trinity, if you're an athlete, you're a student first. So there's an incredible balance that has to come from our coaches at Trinity Western. And so I think all of this is clearly pointing towards more of a positive sociology than a negative one.
I love that.
That's my take.
I love that. Well, as we're kind of coming in for a close, again, youth workers, be encouraged that what you're doing matters deeply. And I think if I can try this on for size, Jason, you'll say if I'm wrong, but from a sociological perspective, hey, the work that you do as a youth worker is contributing to the flourishing of your students.
Amen. Can I say amen? I say amen.
Yes, absolutely. And so don't be sad about that. It is a great thing that you're doing, even if you're not seeing the results this week. You're planting some beautiful seeds and tilling some soil. So it's a good work you're doing. And we'll link in the show notes. We'll link Trinity Western stuff. So obviously people want to check that out. That's great. Any last words that you've got before we wrap things up today?
No, Jeremy, this is exciting. I really appreciate you inviting me out, and I will continue to pray for all of you that are listening, for your ministries, wherever you are, and you are loved, and may the Lord be with you.